Welcome to the President's Forum podcast. Today we're taking a closer look at the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, often referred to as simply the Big Beautiful Bill, which is landmark legislation signed into law on July 4th of this year, and it's beginning to shape the landscape of higher education and workforce development. With Workforce Pell and related provisions moving from passage to implementation, we've convened this conversation to ask what challenges lie ahead and how can institutions prepare. To explore these questions, we're joined by two leaders who bring complementary perspectives to the table. First, we have Rosemary Lahasky. She serves as the Vice President of U.S. Government Relations at Pearson. She has nearly 20 years of experience in federal policy development and advocacy, and she's been deeply involved in the advocacy for Workforce Pell, especially at the Skills First Coalition. We're also joined by MJ Michalak. She's the Vice President of Government Relations at Ivy Tech Community College, and she brings institutional and state-level perspective on how community colleges are preparing to leverage the new opportunities for students and employers. Rosemary, MJ, welcome to the President's Forum podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. Okay, Rosemary, I want to start out really basic for our listeners. Can you tell us about the Pell Grant program? I think we need to start with, why has there been so much attention on expanding it to workforce-focused credentials?
Yeah, so the Pell Grant program, it's a federal financial aid designed to support low-income students pursuing post-secondary education. It's been around for decades. It's traditionally sort of been limited to degree granting programs. However, I think with evolving demands of the labor market, there's been a growing recognition that short-term workforce-focused credentials, like certificates in advanced manufacturing or IT or healthcare, these areas that are really in demand and growing, can be available for Pell as well. These programs, I believe, are often more accessible and directly aligned with in-demand jobs, making them a more powerful tool for economic mobility. Policymakers have increasingly focused on expanding Pell to these programs because they see it as a way to close equity gaps and really respond to workforce shortages.
Right. I mean, there's been conversation around this for a long time. MJ, what can you add? Can you give us a little bit of context on what Pell has traditionally covered and then what Workforce Pell will cover? What are the differences there?
Yeah, absolutely. So traditionally, Pell Grants have been used for credit-bearing academic programs that are at least 15 weeks long. Workforce Pell would allow students to engage in programs that are as short as 8 weeks that lead to recognized credentials and industry credentials. So this means that students are going to have an opportunity to earn short-term credentials that are going to get them a better job or a good job in a shorter period of time, which is going to be hugely beneficial, not only for the students, but also employers in the community.
Right. I mean, this has been a long time coming. As I mentioned before, we've had a lot of conversation around short-term Pell, Workforce Pell. It decreases the amount of time necessary to qualify for Pell. But you're at a community college, MJ. What kind of programs does that open up for, say, Ivy Tech that are now short-term Pell eligible, Workforce Pell eligible?
So we've identified at least 8 programs initially that would be eligible for these. And a lot of these are going to be entry-level healthcare programs, welding, linemen, fiber optics, EMT. So these are going to be high demand jobs that are much needed in the community, where there are huge gaps in the individuals going into these areas. So those are some of the programs that we think that it will help at Ivy Tech. Workforce shortages in healthcare across the nation. We have all kinds of demand for expanding fiber optics so that people can get connected in rural communities. So we think that this will be hugely beneficial for programs like that.
How are students getting funding for these programs prior to Workforce Pell being eligible? Well, I mean, they're not Workforce Pell eligible yet until next year, but how do these things get funded today?
So if students are engaged in these programs now, They are either funding them out of pocket. There is an employer partner who provides them with money. So we have a program called Achieve Your Degree, where we partner with employers and we defer payment for those programs so that the student can complete the program and the employer then pays. But a lot of times students are paying out of pocket for those things, which slows their progress because they're taking one class at a time. They're working full time, taking one class at a time. And so, even though it's an 8-week or less than 15-week program, they're only taking one class. And so it doubles the time that it takes for them. So this will enable them, or they're taking out a student loan to pay for that those one or two classes that they're taking. So this will enable students to complete at a faster rate and reduce the debt that they have as a result.
Very nice. Very nice. Rosemary, I want to jump back to you. So this didn't happen overnight. It took a long time for advocacy efforts to make this possible. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've done on this over the years? I know Skills First Coalition was a big part of this, but tell us about the advocacy work that went into making this change.
Yeah, these proposals have been around for well over a decade. There's been a number of champions in Congress. First and foremost is Senator Kane from Virginia. He has really led the charge, I think, for both the House and the Senate. He's from Virginia, and he had a bill called the Jobs Act, which really was the first bill that really focused on short-term Pell. We've also had other champions like Chairwoman Fox at the time, the Ed Workforce Committee, and Ranking Member Bobby Scott. Both had different bills, but both eventually got on a similar bill. And then, of course, Senator Cassidy, Senator Collins, and others. So it's been around for a long, long time. And there's been, controversies, I think, with it. There's been good, honest debates around some of this stuff. I run something called the Skills First Coalition. We are really a group of more innovative education providers. So those schools that are really on the cutting edge, I think, of providing workforce development and higher education in new and different ways. And employers who are really on the receiving end of a lot of this stuff, who often don't have a voice, I think, when it comes to education programs. And so we felt it was really important we get involved because the way in which post-secondary education is happening in this country is changing rapidly. It's changing right before our eyes with AI. And I think those schools and employers are really thinking differently about some of this stuff. So that's sort of where we came in, sort of provided, I think, a different viewpoint in terms of advocacy that had not often been consulted, quite frankly.
First thing I want to mention is President's Forum is a member of Skills First, and we're happy to be a member. And thanks for all the work that you've done there to advance this issue and other issues. The second thing that I want your reaction to is this is kind of wild that this is a bipartisan policy victory. I mean, I think we could say it's very bipartisan. What's your take on that?
It is. That doesn't happen very often. But workforce does have a way of doing that, workforce policy, skills policy. And so, the way it eventually got passed was in a partisan bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill. But the provisions itself and the policy have always been bipartisan. And like I said, we've had different discussions over time, different disagreements over time, whether for-profit schools or only nonprofit schools could be eligible for this, online programs or only in classroom programs, the efficacy around some of these things are, is there evidence that they really work? There's research, I think, on both sides of this stuff. But I think at the end of the day, we really saw some senators and Congress representatives sort of come together and say, no, things are changing so fast. There's a real need to expand the Pell Grant.
Right. MJ, from your perspective, you've been at Ivy Tech, one of the nation's great community colleges. Tell us, how did you help shape this?
So I started at Ivy Tech about 9 years ago. So when Rosemary says it's been over a decade, she's not exaggerating. We have been advocating this for more than 10 years. It started before I came, and it has been one of our top federal priorities since I started at the college. We have a group of individuals from the college that we take out to DC every 2 years, and they get to choose their policy topic that they advocate for out in DC. And the two groups that I've had out there over the last 4 years have chosen this as their primary topic. And so what we have done is we have created documentation and informational pieces to share with our congressional delegations. We have shared the information locally with businesses so that they could make individuals aware and make the businesses aware in the community. But really, it was about telling the story to our congressional delegation on how this would help members of their community.
Right. Right. There's just been so much work that's gone into it. So many champions that I want to, share the love and the recognition for. There are just countless institutions and associations that have been driving this. So big win for workforce generally. I want to transition over. This is how we got to the place where we have now legislation that has passed that will be implemented. We're working really hard over this next year to implement. I'm just looking ahead at what the potential of this program is. And MJ, I want to start with you on this question, and happy to hear, Rosemary, what your perspective is on this as well. But MJ, what do you expect Workforce Pell to do with regard to the skills gap, and how can it help the economy if it's implemented right?
So I think one of the things it's going to do, it's going to enable us to really focus as a community college on delivering the programs that get the greatest return on investment, not just for Ivy Tech, but the state of Indiana for Ivy Tech. We are going to want to maximize earnings potentials for our students. We want to deliver it at the lowest cost with the highest completion and job placement rates for our students. And we want this all to be aligned to statewide employer demand. So not every program is going to make the cut. So we will have conversations. We have 19 campuses across the state. We serve the entire state. And so once we have that guidance from USDOE, Ivy Tech is really going to consider how many of these non-credit programs that we have now will meet the requirements that would produce the benefit to the state and learners if redesigned to qualify for Workforce Pell. So earlier I talked about we had identified about 8 programs. We have over 70 programs right now, and those are the degree-seeking programs, but we have a number of skills training programs that don't qualify for any financial aid, for federal aid at this point in time. And so really it's going to be identifying those, which will enable us to expand offerings to students, promote to students that they are now eligible to receive federal financial aid for these programs. We think it will infuse more students into Ivy Tech. And then again, because these are short term, it's going to get them out into the community and it's going to help us fill those high demand jobs.
So is every institution doing that same work right now? Well, those who are preparing for this, is that the kind of work that we're seeing at institutions across the country?
Yes, I think so. I mean, we're a member of a number of organizations, and this has been a topic of conversation for many of them, not just from a higher education advocacy side, but we have skills to compete coalitions and things like that in Indiana. And they're also talking about what do they need to know and what do they need to do to help Ivy Tech come up with this list of programs and get the information out to members of the community so that once we have this up and running, we can infuse individuals into these programs to get them out into the community and better jobs.
Right. Right. Rosemary, I know you've done a lot of work with employers, and that's a huge part of the Skills First Coalition is these innovative employers who care about workforce development. What's their perspective on this?
Yeah, so many of them have started to embrace skills-based hiring. So this idea that you look at a person's skills, knowledge, competencies, rather than just the degree. And I think that now we're finally seeing federal financial aid sort of follow that model. And I think that that's an exciting opportunity. Maybe it'll help sort of push some of those policies forward, which I really think actually opens up the talent pool to look at a lot of different people that maybe they weren't looking at before, who are more than qualified to do the work. So, that's my hope. I think that comes out of this, and a lot of employers' hope is that we're finding talent all across this country, making sure they get the reskilling, upskilling, needed skilling to do the jobs that are in demand. And that we get them employed.
Okay, I'm going to end this conversation with an exit question here, where I want you both to rate your excitement, your optimism for workforce Pell. So a 0 is it's going to crash and burn. 100 on the scale is this thing is going to be a massive success and change the way that higher education is deployed. Where do you rank this as far as its potential? MJ, I'm going to go to you.
Figured you'd start with me. I give it 100 plus, quite honestly. I do think that this is one of the biggest innovations in higher education that the federal government has done in years, because it is a way of rethinking the way that federal financial aid is being used to support workforce development. So Ivy Tech is Indiana's workforce engine, and everything that we do is through the lens of workforce. And so we are so excited to have this opportunity to partner with our employers and our communities to roll this out in a way that's going to benefit workforce and economic development in Indiana.
Okay, that is as optimistic as you could possibly be, and I can appreciate that. Rosemary, what do you think?
Well, I'm excited, and I haven't been excited about something in a long time when it comes to workforce policy. I'll be honest. I don't think there's one silver bullet. I think that there's, this law has a lot of guardrails in it. I think it'll be a little bit difficult to implement the way I would have wanted it to be written. But I am optimistic, Wes, and I think that for workforce development policy in particular, we have never seen this kind of infusion of cash that could go to students, that could really help them in real time find education that is affordable, that is accessible, that's flexible, that's innovative, and that is really meeting the demands of employers. And so I think that this has the opportunity to really be a game changer, and we're excited to sort of follow the process as it happens. Advocacy doesn't stop when a bill becomes a law. Advocacy must continue as we start to write the rules and we start to implement this stuff. And so we have a long road ahead of us.
I agree with Rosemary.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement in that it's going to take a lot of work. I'm not as optimistic as MJ. I think it will do. I think it will change the way that we view financial aid moving forward. I think that it's going to have really large impacts. So I would give it somewhere in like the 70 to 80 range of potential. But one of the things that I think we have the potential to see moving forward is workforce Pell having an outsized influence on workforce policy, potentially with WIOA. So it'll be interesting to see what the impact is of institutions moving to align with workforce Pell, and then kind of the pressure that puts on WIOA and other workforce programs to be more workable, less administrative requirements and burdens, et cetera. So I'm hopeful that we see changes on that front. So that's kind of where I am on that. And Rosemary, I think we let you off the hook pretty easy. Did we get a number from you? Where were you? Where are you on the 1 to 100 number?
I'm going to come in at a 60.
Okay.
But I am excited, and I am not normally excited, so maybe I'll give myself a 75 just for that.
I can appreciate that, and I've worked with Rosemary enough to know there aren't highs and there aren't lows. She's very steady, and so I would expect nothing more than a steady response on this one, and we've got a lot of work to do, that's for sure.
Yeah, the devil is definitely in the details on this one. So as the negotiated rulemaking rolls out in the coming months, I'm very excited about that. As a policy wonk, those things are not necessarily the most fun things, but those are the types of conversations that I think will really make or break this. And so I'm really excited for that to start so that we can really get into the details of how we're going to implement this.
That's a great way to end this conversation, MJ. And that is, the work is just starting. Making the details, the next portion of this conversation is something that we have to do. And the negotiated rulemaking is how we do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, this is one of those things that could make or break how it goes. We can remove obstacles and or we can put up obstacles that will prevent us from making the most of what this legislation can be. And so I'm really eager for that to get started so that we really have some direction on how we can move and begin to have this roll out.
And do we believe we'll hear about negotiators for that particular negotiated rulemaking in November? Is that the time frame that those should be announced?
My understanding is later this month or early November, because I know that the negotiated rulemaking, the dates are being held at the beginning of December and January. So we should be hearing soon.
Yep. And I think even despite a shutdown, Wes, I think they're still going to move forward. So we expect this to keep moving.
Oh, that's what you're hearing is regardless of the shutdown, we'll be moving.
Yeah.
There's so much work to be done. I can't imagine, not moving it forward. There's just absolutely no way to be ready for launch if it doesn't happen and happen promptly.
That's right. Because even, there's an implementation start date of July 1st of next year. So right. We're they got to keep going if we're going to meet that date.
Yep. Okay. Well, Rosemary, MJ, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been really great to talk about this advancement in higher education. And I'll say we'll stay close on this issue. And as the rulemaking starts, maybe we'll get the band back together and talk about, the next steps.
Wonderful. If I could just add one last thing as colleges and communities are rolling this out and when we get the rules, but it's so important that the colleges loop in their financial aid offices to make sure that they understand the nuances of what federal student aid might require. It's really going to be a partnership, not just of the administrative arm or the workforce arm of whatever college, but also the communities and the financial aid offices. It's going to be so imperative. So just want to put a little plug in for our financial aid teams. They are experts in this field and we need to utilize their expertise whenever we can.
I know a lot of financial aid folks that are going to be happy that you put that plug in, MJ.
Well, we appreciate the work that they do.
Thanks for everything. Thanks to both of you. We'll talk soon. Expanding Workforce Pell has the potential to remove barriers for learners, strengthen our talent pipeline, and better connect higher education to the needs of the economy. Now it's time to do the hard work of implementing this legislation. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the President's Forum podcast. To learn more about our work and stay connected to future conversations, visit us at presidentsforum.org. We'll see you next time.